Right. Hello and good evening. Hey, you all are muted.
We're good now, right?
Yes, you're good. You're good.
I just want to raise something before we start, which is that I hope everybody's aware of the Ancram situation with the COVID there. And they had a meeting of 10 people and 3 of them afterwards tested positive. And they're going back to remote Zoom and they're requiring masks. And I just think that people think it's over, it's not over. And I try to be cautious and distance, and there are protocols. And I think that, you know, as a town hall, we have to be really concerned about the air quality. And I have, this is a carbon dioxide meter that will register how much is carbon dioxide, which is a proxy for possible virus. And if it gets to a certain point, you need to open windows. Okay?
Would you like us to start wearing masks at meetings? I'm okay with it if you,
Everyone
okay.
can do whatever they choose to do, and that's fine with me. And it's fine with me to meet in person.
I can do whatever makes everybody feel comfortable.
All right, we're gonna call this meeting to order, workshop meeting, April 18th, 2022. To review the proposed solar tax law and the discussion on the cannabis zoning. BFJ is here tonight. I will let you get started.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Should we do, I know you got the solar law and the last changes as a result of our last meeting. Should we do that first?
Yes.
Okay, great. Taylor, you might want to bring that up. I think there were relatively few changes, but a couple, the height, for instance.
Can you make me a co-host?
We're on it.
Okay, great minds think alike, I see.
I was saying it as I saw you getting ready to do it. I was like, oh.
You can tell because I squinched forward because my eyes aren't that good, so I've got to.
Well, you're good now. You're good now.
All right.
And Taylor, I think the only where it's new is where we have both red and underlined. It's the underlined part that's new, right?
That is correct. And so I've tried to zoom in to make it easier to see. But yes, as
Right.
Frank mentioned, the new text is red and underlined.
Good. So, Taylor, you might go through it, the
Okay.
purpose, yeah.
So just, in the purpose, we just added a sentence because we had previously said what, tier 3 is for large scale solar, but it was, couched in that tier 1 and tier 2 were accessory uses. We wanted to confirm tier 3 is not a customary accessory use, that it's a principal use. Just a sentence to kind of hammer that home that tier 1 and 2 are accessory uses, tier 3 are principal uses, and that's a great way to define the differences. So I'm going to skip down, to this section B. Tier 1, again, just adding another sentence here or a couple words, just hammering home. Roof-mounted solar PV that are accessories to principal uses. That's in B1. I'm going to keep going to B2. This was in response to a comment, I believe, just same thing, saying the solar PV installations may generate up to 110% of existing or potential energy demand for on-site uses and may not generate energy for off-site uses. I think this was in response to a comment about, tier 2 is limited to 110% of existing or potential energy demand. And so we wanted just to apply that back to tier 1 as well. 2E, this is something that when reviewing the model law, I think was just smart to put one sentence on. It's probably something that all applicants would include, but it's one sentence saying that all solar panels shall have anti-reflective coatings. We say that throughout. But same thing, just to put it there, so applicants know. And these are a few sentences about our discussion about sloped roofs and flat roofs. This is direct response to our discussion last meeting. The zoning enforcement officer may permit installations that we said vary slightly from being parallel if there is a reason to do so. And then that's letter I, or I1, and then 2 and 3 are sentences from the model law that I thought were helpful to this discussion, which is that they are mounted a maximum distance of 8 inches between the roof surface and the highest edge of the system. And then number 3 is that they shall not extend higher than the highest point of the roof surface. So just kind of respecting the maximum height of the building. I thought those were kind of relatively small changes, but would be helpful. And then same thing, this item G here, this is also from the model law. Solar panels on flat roofs shall not extend above the top of a surrounding parapet or more than 24 inches above the flat surface of the roof. I think it's same thing, respecting the total height of the building, which may or may not be the total height of the permitted in the permitted zoning district. Okay. Moving, and feel free to jump in with any questions or comments as I roll along. We're trying to just review things. So same, we're now in tier 2, section C. We get a tier 2, C2 about the hamlet districts. We just added this one sentence about glare.
And then
So
this is the new one we researched, yeah.
That's correct. So this is one we had discussed in our meeting. This is, what is it, it's tier 2, section 2, letter E. We had discussed what should the maximum height of ground mounted solar installations be. And we did research on neighboring communities and found that 12 feet was what other folks had permitted. Some permitted higher. But we thought I think it was either 12 or 15 feet is generally what we saw. But for being in the hamlet, I think 12 feet is, we went with the lower range because it's, you're going to have neighbors. So we did 12 feet. Which that just seemed to be what was going on in neighboring communities. I don't think the model law had a maximum.
No, we did find one at 10 feet. We found some at 15, and I think 12 was we thought, good model.
It seemed to be kind of a happy medium.
Our fence height though is 6 foot.
That's right.
Should we allow our solar panels to be higher than our fences?
High
Because
schools are about 6 feet. I don't think.
Yes.
you think so?
Yes, we're allowing them to be 12 feet, so double the height of a fence.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, my whole thing is you can't even try to hide it from your neighbors if we're only allowed a 6 foot fence and somebody wants to put it there. I'm still looking at 6 feet.
It would eliminate a certain type of, you've seen the ones.
Oh, I see. So that your neighbor would still see something from ground level, yeah.
But you see,
This is up to you if you feel,
maybe not
we
like my
were
friend has, but even if you see over on the State Line Road or whatever, when you go like Millerton, what is it, the shortcut to Connecticut, somebody who has one back there where it's just a single pole and, a series of panels stuck together, maybe 4 panels. And that's what this would accommodate, whereas the school one is more of a long that, and people will have these like 3 or 4 in their backyard, and there's no way you can do those under 6 feet. So I don't know, asking to.
All right, no, but I mean, it's also right in the middle of town though too. And I mean, what are you really gonna get in any of our backyards in town? You know what I mean? I think either way, I'm good with it, but I just wanted to be known that our fence height is 6 feet and we're allowing it over. No, I just wanted to be noted. I'm good either way, but it's.
So what we do have, and because Matt, I think your point is a solid one. So this is kind of the same thing we've tried to do with zoning for the town, in general, which we could add, we could make setbacks bigger, we could tighten it up. But in 2B, we say the planning board shall consider opportunities to minimize visual impact to neighbors while undergoing site plan review, and they may impose conditions to minimize visual impacts, including but not limited to screening and and additional setbacks. So we're giving the planning board the opportunity to look at it on a case-by-case basis and decide. Because I think your point.
No, then that works. Yes, that works. I just wanted it to be, known that it was higher.
Yeah.
So, but
absolutely.
that works with that language. Thank you, Taylor.
Yep. All right. So moving on to outside the Hamlet zoning districts, that's 3B, same sentence, glare, anti-reflective coating. All right. And so then we get to height. So this one we do, so maximum height for tier 2 installations on lots that are less than or equal to 2 acres. There's 2 different sections in outside the Hamlet zoning districts. There's less than or equal to 2 acres. We've put it, and that's 2, or this subsection C here. Same thing, 12 feet. So it's essentially the same as if it is in the Hamlet district, just thinking again, smaller lot sizes. And it's the same language, that it's a 12-foot limit. And it does, I believe, has the exact same language that the planning board can require. Yeah, exactly, right here. The planning board may require conditions and additional setbacks. So it's the same coverage. Okay, so going to lots greater than 2 acres. So we've added the glare sentence, and then lots greater than 2 acres. But we kind of created another section here between 2 acres and 5 acres, 12 feet in height. But then if you're 5 acres or more, we've extended it to 15 feet in height. And that was in response to a comment at our last meeting that said, hey, if you've got more land, shouldn't you be able to build something bigger? Because it's less intrusive to your neighbors. And we limited it to 15 because that was the highest that we saw, that your neighboring communities use. It was a 15-foot maximum height.
Taylor, you know what? I'm thinking of the language now.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't thought of this when we discussed it, but the acreage in between 2 and 5 acres, we've also kept at 12 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, we may only need to use for this, anything higher than 5 acres shall be 15. Anything less than that is 12. It's the 12, in other words, I'm not sure that we need the extra sentence, but we can look at it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do, but I think we need it because it's in a separate subsection.
Okay, this is for lots greater than 2 acres.
Yes.
So then we say in item 6 for lots greater than 5 acres, right?
Yeah, we say lots between 2 and 5, and then we have a sentence that says lots greater than 5 acres.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, good.
Right. So move on to tier 3, large scale solar installations. All right, so this is where we added a little bit more, based off of our discussion last week. The applicant must submit a property operation and maintenance plan during site plan approval, which is going to describe ongoing maintenance and property upkeep, such as mowing and trimming. That is 4B, section 4B. All right. So then this is lot coverage. This was in response to in our meeting. I forget the name of the company that said that they needed between, I think it was 20 to 25% lot coverage. You sent the presentation, but the name of the energy company is escaping me right now. But so we thought if they said they need 20 to 25%, but it tighter at the smaller acreage and then higher at a larger at the larger acreage. So 20% to 30% on the 2 different areas, less than 70 acres and then greater than 70 acres. Section 6, added a sentence on all solar panels having anti-reflective coating. And then this is, we'll go to 7, decommissioning. This was language from the model law, which this protects the town, saying if you've abandoned it or it's not producing electricity for a year, it's removed at the owner/operator's expense. And that option may come from the security which has been made with the town, set forth in section 9B, which we'll get to. And the decommissioning plan must be submitted by the applicant, addressing the cost, the time to decommission or to repair any damage to the property caused by installation and removal of the energy system. And there is a security. Section C here, that's essentially saying that the applicant needs to have cash, bond, or other security up to 100, no, it's not to, it shall be 125% of the cost of removal with an escalator of 2% annually for the life of the solar energy system. Just this is protecting the town for if someone goes under, you're not stuck footing the bill to remove it, that they've already paid for the removal. That's the default. That's so section 1 discusses it, and then section 2, in the event of a default, the security shall be forfeited to the town, which shall be entitled to maintain the action. And then section E, we just do definitions to help, kind of zoning language. This is kind of meant to be an appendix, but what is glare, for
These are all taken from the state.
Yep. These are all state model law definitions. Just clearly defining what it is. Roof mounted solar energy system, solar panels. And that is it.
Yeah, I think what we tried to do is just answer your questions from the last meeting and make the additions that you asked for. So that's the revised solar law.
I did just.
The issue that I would like to raise, and I think what you did was terrific, and I really liked it. Just came out of our meeting from before, but the whole issue of agrovoltaics and farmland, it's a statewide issue, and I circulated a little piece of information about a study by the American Farmland Trust. And I think it's really important to understand that New York State has very ambitious goals with solar, but the state is also very concerned with trying to preserve farmland. And how you integrate this, which is all very new, and the study is just being done as we go along, but we're going to be seeing a huge amount of solar development over the next 20 years probably. And a lot of that is going to be aimed at farmland because it's an easy place to put it, and New York State has lots of farmland. But there's certain things that we could give preference to. For instance, not putting it on your highest quality agricultural soils, finding locations that are not conducive to farming or successful farming. And there's one down in Pauling that's a very large solar array, and it's really well sited because you hardly see it from the road, and it's on a field that maybe you could run sheep on, but it's not a good agricultural field. So there's certain things that it would be nice to sort of give some flexibility to the planning board about preserving farmland. The other thing is, when it takes farmland away from farmers who rent, that presents a huge economic problem for them. So that's something that also you might want to look at. There are just a lot of issues around this that are new and happening now. And also the agrivoltaics has to do with studying things like how can you run sheep? How can you run your animals with consistent with the solar panels? And then I saw a program the other day on how do you plant around your solar panels to have bees be actively engaged in those areas. So there's all kinds of kind of exciting stuff out there that's just starting to happen, and we ought to give some lip service to those ideas, I think.
No, I think, Sarah, I think it's a good point. Well, I read through the American Farmland Trust that you sent, and I started looking at what we wrote. One, we didn't write it up for tonight, but one section I thought is in the law, section D, which is the tier 3. That's the large scale solar installations. Those are the ones.
But that's all. That's the only place it's going to be applicable.
That's right. I was.
It's the issue of agriculture.
Yeah, I was thinking in there that, well, first we want to make sure we've made clear that tier 3, we could say, we could add a section under 4, site plan approval. We've got an A, a B, and we've got a C, which could come last. I think if we added something that said applicant shall indicate to the planning board the potential impacts of tier 3 solar installation on agricultural uses.
It impacts on rural character farms, farm structure. Yeah, I mean, they had
We could expand
agricultural
that.
uses and farmland, or just specify that.
Yeah, so I think.
But you might want to just specify also that, that the board is empowered to require them to, do certain things, or whatever,
Yeah,
But when it comes to an agricultural, don't they get a lot of exemptions where they could get around our zone in any way and do what they wanted to if it was like a true ag and market type deal?
Very possibly.
Oh, yeah, that's my only thing when it comes to the agriculture. Like, I thought that they could cut us right out.
The super large ones that are really basically going to be skirting seeker and how they're going to be permitted. But I would just like the town to acknowledge and do whatever we can to preserve our agricultural land uses and indicate that, we're in favor of solar and agriculture.
But
Yeah.
if you require them to, because the ag and markets is not gonna come, because this is a different use, like, this is not used by a farm. This is making, right, so ag and market, someone who comes with a tier 3 solar thing is not under ag and market.
Okay.
The only way it could be if they're using it to power their farm, like Ronnie Brook has those panels up there and stuff like that. But you could, we could require them, right, to have a plan, like present a plan as to how they're going to utilize the other lands, or, preserving the farm uses and whatever, having animals or trees or whatever. We have some, I don't know how, obviously it's not the proper wording of that, but some sort of plan that they're required to put forth as part of the application process of how they're going to utilize the rest of the land and preserve the farming.
I think that the siting of solar is being considered very important, and what's the best way to site it? And those are things that I would want the planning board looking at. Is this a good use for this particular piece of land? Because the more we do that, we're all going to be living with this visual solar all around us. I think that's a reality. So we want to give the planning board or give incentives maybe to have people recognize that. So I would like to see I would like to know the agricultural rating of whatever land is the solar panels are being placed on.
Oh, yeah, that'd be like a
Something
separate
like that,
part.
so that you would, because if you're putting it on top farmland, that's not as attractive as if you're putting it on land that's not really that useful for agriculture.
Well,
and there are hillsides that can be used for panels that can work very well facing, pretty much facing south, that make really good sites for it.
Well, we do mention, prime agricultural lands in other parts of the zoning code.
Yep.
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know how generally applicable they are. Are they applicable just to the sections that mentioned it? I don't know if does it speak generally? I can't remember. If it says, any major development has to be, take that into account and not use them if possible, right? I mean, that's.
Or make sure that nothing's gonna happen to them so that they can't later be returned to productive agriculture. There's that concern as well that exists out there.
Yes,
So
yes.
Frank, maybe you guys can look at what we have already in the code regarding the prime agricultural
Yeah,
soil.
but yes,
And
I think
maybe add a section in here or a part of this, like 4A on the D4A.
Yes.
Where we would mention that, the planning board would look at that.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think this is a concern that we're picking up in at least one other community south of you, where planning board has just, this is the village of Mount Kisco, which doesn't have so much agricultural land, but it has forested area. And they were concerned about impacts on some tree species. So I think putting in, under a D4, maybe the site plan approval, what is required that, the applicant should show the impacts of the solar installation and that it's minimized, impacts on agricultural and natural features. I think we could write that up.
That's great. It'd be perfect.
And then
Yeah.
we can have a sentence like encouraging, if applicable, encouraging designs that a word is escaping me, but that, like Sarah, what you were mentioning, that work with agriculture, that you could run sheep, or you can do something so that it's complementary. Maybe that's not the right word, but
This is just really starting, but we don't want to leave it out. We want to at least
Right.
give it some acknowledgement that we recognize it and that we value our agricultural uses already, so.
Yeah.
yes.
My suggestion, why don't we try to word that and get it back to you this week, maybe? I would put it under, as was discussed, D4, and maybe make it item C. For impacts, solar impacts on agriculture and natural resources, land, soils, natural resources. And we need to put a little bit of teeth into it to make sure that the planning board has sufficient site plan powers to make sure that it's clear that the planning board can, in reviewing this, make sure that the impacts are minimized. Okay.
Yep. I totally agree. Did notice a typo on my end. I just want to call it out. It was in same tier 3. It was in section 7, decommissioning, and I said Pine Plains is set forth in section 9B. I believe this is supposed to be section 7B instead of section 9B. I'm making a note. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is meant to be. Call it out.
Anything else on this solar?
Yeah, I have one small thing that I noticed under section C, tier 2, for the Hamlet zoning district, it explicitly says site plan review is required, but under section 3, outside the Hamlet zoning district, you imply it, but you never actually say site plan is required.
Okay. We should say it.
Yes, we should say that.
So I see. So 2A is explicit, site plan review is required. So I'll add 3A.
Yeah, we should say that. Let me raise to the board in this agricultural tier 3 is, as you all know, very different from the tier 1. The tier 1 being basically on a house, and tier 2 ground mounted. Tier 3 is really a commercial operation. The state law doesn't do this, but I've seen other municipalities do it. Tier 3 has been made a special permit, which gives the planning board greater teeth than site plan approval. In other words, a special permit, you have to make a determination in the special permit that the requirements of special permit are actually met. And if they're not, the planning board doesn't have to grant it. So that's one thing. I'm not sure, I'm not necessarily recommending that, but Sarah, with your question on agriculture, if you want a tier, by the way, we also don't think there'll be many large-scale solar installations proposed.
At least right now.
At least right now. But one thing to really differentiate tier 3 and to make it more special is to make it a special permit. Now, the state doesn't do that in their model law, right? Because they are, as you said earlier, really right now focusing on advocacy for solar. And they, you know, as in the model law, for instance, doesn't even mention agriculture. So we're putting it in. And one thing we could do with tier 3 is to simply make it a special permit. That is a step up from site plan review. So, by the way, policy call by you, I'm not necessarily advocating that. I just wanted to point out that it could make sense.
What's the downside?
The only downside, well, the downside, for instance, to someone like the state who works, you know, for the state, an advocate for solar, is that they really want to move forth with solar as much as possible. So they don't want anything to be a special permit because they see the special permit as an added function of, it's usually, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be granted by the planning board. Sometimes it's a ZBA special permit. Sometimes it goes, you know, to the elected official. From their point of view, they're just trying to make everything through the planning board as much as possible. And we could put any special permit to the planning board in any case, but also they want to make it the solar applications as smooth as possible. It's why they've tried. They haven't done away with seeker, but they've sure tried to do it here. And so you see that. And what happens is if you go too far in one direction for a virtue or a good, in this case, solar, sometimes you kind of slough over or ignore what we've just talked about, preservation of agricultural lands, prime soils, natural habitat and features. I think you definitely want to look at those and we can write something up. We can keep it a site plan, but the other way to do it is to make it a special permit. Any tier 3 developer coming in will realize, I think, right away, it's a special permit and therefore it's significantly different from tier 1 and tier 2.
And would that make it easier to make requirements on them or really no difference? Or like we said, like, hey, we want you to site it over here and, you know, and come up with a plan for farming on those other acres? I mean, would there be a difference between the two?
Yeah, if a special permit under New York state law is seen as totally discretionary with the planning board, whereas site plan approval is considered a little bit more administrative in the sense that, you know, unless there's a clear violation of zoning, the site plan is expected to be approved in one form or another. A special permit can be outright denied. And so it's a tougher, what it makes is it will make the tier 3 large scale solar installations more discretionary with you. And it makes it clear that all of the requirements for that special permit need to be met. So by the way, I don't want to push this. I just wanted to draw the distinction here that if you decide that you want to make agricultural uses, natural habitat, a very serious concern for any tier 3 application, then one other way to do that would be to make it a special permit.
I don't think
you have to.
Michael, do you want to ask the planning board if they have an opinion on it? I mean, it's more, I think it's probably more rigorous review. But you've had some experience with special permits.
Yeah, I think we're fine as far as getting it done. It's policy wise.
And it's,
you guys.
If it's a special permit, is it a public hearing is required?
If it's a special permit, a public hearing is required.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea to have a public hearing.
Yeah, I can't imagine ever doing one of these without a public hearing like that.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm,
Special permit.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
How do you feel, Don?
I think a special permit is fine because you can tailor it to
Mhm, I like
what you
it.
really need for that specific. issue. I'd like to go back to what you were saying though, is that earlier, Frank, was the whole idea of the state of New York is trying to make these as smooth and as possible, you know, to develop these as quickly as possible in order to meet the goals in
they
there.
are.
You know, we've been patting ourselves on the back and saying we're climate smart, but I hate to see a solar law get to the point where it is a discouragement. But one other question I wanted to ask you was, a while ago in Ulster County, I think it was a tough decision on what was considered to be the on-site demand. In other words, if a farmer with several properties, possibly tenant houses, possibly whatever, and they were trying to keep the 110% to the specific site that the panels were on. And I think they lost in court, I'm not sure. But, you know, so if someone has a fairly large operation and calculating their 110%, or what do you think, are they going to be allowed to almost like look at a build out or whatever?
Right,
Am I
that's a good
making
question.
sense?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, maybe while we write up this special permit thing and public hearing requirement, maybe we could get from Warren that case. Do you know the name of the case by any chance?
I just remember reading about it in the newspaper.
But it's Ulster County.
I'm pretty sure. I could talk to her. Warren possibly will remember it or whatever, but it was local news for a while, probably 3 or 4 years ago. But
We can look it
the whole
up too.
idea is that he had off-site facilities and he was trying to use the generation. This is when we were rolling your meter back, and he was trying to get tax credits for what he generated on one property to use against another property.
Another property. So
Right.
he was, I see.
And these would, because I could see it, especially if they were contiguous properties, right? They're just maybe cut up into different parcels. Is that, well, I'm going to use it.
I think he was pushing it back into the grid.
Right.
And then assuming that, we had discussed this when we were looking at putting solar on our landfill. On whether or not that landfill credits could be used against this building and say the community center and the highway garage. And that was never resolved in my mind. But it was the whole idea of using the credits that you're generating. But it even goes back to the 110% max on an individual, the tier 1. If they can generate more than 110 without violating the other ones, and if it is true that you can roll your meter back, that's kind of what the state was looking at, was that we could generate it wherever we could, and it would just go into the grid rather than being used on site. So this gives us a lot more leeway than we had originally, and I like that idea because this is going to evolve.
Oh, yeah, I think it will.
And technology is going to evolve and also a lot of these concepts. So I think it's very important that we get something like this in place right up front, and then we can evolve with it.
That's right. And I think that's doubly true when the state itself is,
It's pushing,
they're going to revise their model law too. They hope at the end of the year. We'll see, if they meet that deadline, but they may do that, or if not in 2023. So it'll evolve over time. But I think you have a good start here, and we can check on that question with Warren, and we'll also write up a section then on tier 3 to make sure that agriculture is respected.
Did we make a decision on special permit?
Yes.
We're gonna do a special permit.
They're going to do special permit, Taylor, with a,
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will that require additional language to be placed in the special permit section?
I
Tier
will have to
three.
look at the special permit section. It may.
Yes.
Yep. That's great. Okay. Terrific. Anything else on law, or we can go to our favorite law, Taylor?
Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, any other questions, comments?
No, we're good.
Great.
All right.
Well, on cannabis, I just wanted to introduce it. I think you have already, there's a nice little summary that we had on, from the it's called the Office of Cannabis Management. I love the titles of local offices, but and it's really talking about the two different types of control. One is allowing retail dispensaries, and the other is on-site consumption licenses. And my understanding is that you have indicated your preference to just do retail dispensaries, but not the on-site consumption licenses. Did we get that?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So with that brief question, what we've written up is a sort of a first outline here and then an actual text for just the former, the retail store or retail dispensary. So it would allow those, it would not allow the others, the on-site consumption. So I'll just hit the draft outline a little bit. What we were doing, the big thing here is to just keep these limited to the Hamlet Business District with a special permit. So that is the biggest call of all, I think, for this law. We found in other places that have done this in the Mid-Hudson. One that we did their comprehensive plan is Nyack, that they're considering it now downtown, and they also have it on one state route, which is a very commercial route, Route 59. But to us, your commercial area really is the Hamlet, the H Business District. So we've suggested permitting it there. This doesn't restrict you someday from amending this or putting it in other districts, but that was our first call, and that's a major call. So we wanted to be sure there was some comfort level with this.
Does that extend down to like Stewart's?
But that's your main street, which is
Because I think like,
just the four corners.
But what about the possibility in the light industrial?
By the way,
well, I
that's,
also think like down by Stewart's area, like where the Chinese place used to be, like stuff like that, that could be a potential.
Yeah.
That's why.
You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think that we should put it right there just yet. I think, because the also in the business district is kind of close to the school. I know we're not going to want it right next to a school.
Or churches.
Or yeah, they're
Right.
supposed to not be next to churches either, right? Like in there. So that eliminates a lot of our. That eliminates most right there.
It does limit the number that you could have for sure.
But yeah, I
You'll
think like
see,
even like the old duels built, like, we don't know what's going on there, but duels, Moose on the Loose, like, so I think that
Mhm.
side of town, it has
I agree
potential
with you.
as being one, like a good location for it, like down by the post office.
I think it's-
prefer that.
so that is the big question, where we would allow it. We obviously picked the the Hamlet Business District. If there's other, there was mentioned, we did discuss internally the new manufacturing district, for instance. And that's a possibility. We would normally keep these to, we see this as sort of a retail use. So we'd keep it to business districts or manufacturing districts. We wouldn't put this in a residential district.
Right.
Someone
So I'm-
mentioned,
There's still businesses down there, but it's just not considered our business district. Like there's Ginocchio's there, Will Roots there, the post office is there. There's a lot of other businesses going in.
Taylor, can
that
you
are
bring a
already there,
zoning
right?
map? up? Yeah,
Oh, there's, I
Yeah,
mean,
like
look,
down by
I
the
had to pick up
post
the
office there. Like, I
right, and so
think-
this is all, it's all Main Street.
Okay.
Right, that's
Hamlet, or
basically-
Hamlet Main Street zoning, because you're right, the Hamlet business is, it's generally here.
Just that
Yeah,
little.
pretty much. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
No room there.
and that doesn't work just because with the church, if you go to light industrial, it backs up to the high school property.
Mhm.
So I think we have to look for it to come down on Main Street more.
On Main Street,
Right.
yeah. What district is that, Taylor? Let me see if can you bring up, Taylor, a zoning map? Or-
Let me check. We are, I think we mentioned to you, we're having significant network issues with our
Yeah.
company. So I don't know if I have a zoning map in front of me right now. I'll have to find it.
Yeah, no problem. That's all right, Taylor. If we can't, obviously, we have hard copy and we can look at it. I think the question really is whether we want to extend it down Main Street, if I'm hearing it right.
Well, we
Well,
would want
Yes.
there are areas within that Main Street that I think would be appropriate. I mean, we don't want to convert an old house. But if you
Yeah.
get right to the end of it, there you go.
Yep. So here's the proposed map on the right here. Oops, sorry.
So we've limited it to H business, but you've also got the HMS.
Right.
I think the HMS would be suitable because we do have other retail in there. And that is on our two main stretches of roads, people coming in and out, which would provide the best parking, visibility.
Yep.
And
And yet preserve what we
Yep.
really like the four corners to look like.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, we can do that. We can do that. It gives, much more opportunity.
What kind of restrictions are the state licensing putting on? No, would either be duplicating or piggybacking on.
Their main restriction, and it's a very considerable one, that the state is got a licensing procedure that they have outlined, and I believe we did send you that Office of Cannabis Management. What is the law for local government?
Yeah.
When you get into it, it talks about, it talks about taxation that the state wants. The state wants to tax this,
Mhm.
wants to have a license for it. So there's an excise tax that they get into, and
Mhm.
into revenue distribution.
But anything about proximity? I mean, we were talking about.
Oh, now
proximity.
no, they're leaving that up to you. And by the way, what we
Okay.
do now, what I can tell you, if you look, so I think we've made this decision, Taylor. Yeah, so it's the H business plus the HMS. Okay.
Yes, got it.
Now, if you look at what Taylor's got in the outline here, under special permit conditions, we've listed 10 of them. And one is where, so we're saying H business
Oh.
district. And H district. Then you need the state license. Then you need separation from select other uses and normal schools, churches, and other cannabis retail outlets. And we'll get to that. And then we've done hours of operation, drive-through prohibited, visibility controls from the street. By the way, secure disposal, ventilation plan, a security plan. By the way, the state gets into this because this is an all cash
No,
business.
that was one of my questions. I had
Yeah,
heard that
this is-
they had a very strict.
Yep, and you'll see we
security.
have a lot on security. And then, so we have 10 special permit conditions. And what I thought here is maybe I could turn this to Taylor and we can go right to the actual text.
Okay. Yeah, we just took a stab. So we wanted to first go over the outline in case there are big changes like this one. Add to the Hamlet Main Street, and we will do that. First, we've just defined, so getting into the draft zoning text. Right now, we are adding new definitions, what is an adult use retail dispensary? The retailer is this, it's someone who sells cannabis to 21 years and older. Retail dispensary authorizes acquisition, for sale, that sort of thing, that you need a license. We define the permitting authority of being the Cannabis Control Board and the Office of Cannabis Management, established by this state law. Moving on. So here we go. The special use permit standards. And this is the part of your code where each special use permit gets a new section. So adult use retail dispensary. So it's permitted in the Hamlet business, and we're going to add Hamlet Main Street. So number 2, they have to submit proof that they're licensed. You've got to be licensed. Show the planning board that you have your license. And this is the question you were getting to, Don, I believe, is that that no building or structure shall be located within 100 feet. And then we have, in italics, or 200. That's up to you. We just put 100 as a placeholder. Any school property, house of worship, or another adult use retail dispensary. And we say you have to measure it from official maps, from the radius of the points, or, between different points. But that's the question for y'all, is what is that distance? We thought 100.
I mean, could we do a different distance from the school, from a house of worship? You know what I mean? Like, I would have more priority in keeping it away from the school, whereas a house of worship, I'm okay with 100 feet from a house of worship, but in a school's aspect, I would like it a little bit, maybe further away. Could we do that? Depending on what they are? Does that make sense or no?
You could, and some of the older codes do that, actually. We just thought here that we might not need to distinguish. It sort of puts the school on a higher level than the church, I guess, to put it, blunt terms. And we thought, well,
but we got to watch the 200 feet because
we could treat everybody equally, in other words. But I think what we were getting at is what is your comfort level? And we didn't go through the code to see if you do this elsewhere. If you use 200 feet from a school or church for any other use, or you use 100 feet, it's usually either 100 or 200.
Our liquor store.
Well, that's true. Liquor stores.
I didn't, and I looked and I didn't see anything. I could be wrong. I defer to you. I didn't see a distance, because that was kind of what my thought I first went to, was like, okay, this is different, but it's going to be similar to a liquor store or something like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say our liquor
is only like 50 feet. The liquor store to the church.
Well, I would do at least 100. I would do at least 100 feet.
We could put the dispensary on the other side. You get your alcohol.
I was looking at the way we define how you measure that 100 feet. Some people say from the front door. Some people have different ways of measuring it.
Well, we can come back to that, right? When we figure out that.
Oh, yeah, you can come back to that. I think it's a
Let's
policy.
not dwell on that right now, because that could be a long one.
I thought the
Okay.
state actually did have numbers like that in their license. I thought the state had already assumed that role.
In the license requirements, Don?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, I'll double check.
okay.
Because you're right. I mean, we shouldn't, if the state license requires something, we shouldn't say something different, because the license is going to have to be.
Church was different than the school.
Well, I thought so. That's what I thought were
I'm
state
not terribly
requirements.
concerned with the church.
By the way, that could be, and if the state does have that, then as Taylor said, it's probably best to follow what the state has.
Right. So I'll double check the license requirements.
All right. By the way, an even more difficult one sometimes is item 4, which is the hours of operation. Again, this has to be a comfort level on your end, as long as it's reasonable.
I think 7 days a week is okay with me because our busiest times in town is the weekends. And if it's gonna be a source of revenue and, you know, some people have weekends off, they can't get here during the week.
I
Yeah,
tend to
this
like
is
the
your-
liquor store model.
Monday through Saturday,
What's that?
Monday through Saturday.
Liquor
They
stores
have
are,
something- they have
open
something
seven.
else.
yeah, liquor stores open on Sunday.
You know, I would.
Yeah,
I-
yeah, and then I'll go with that. Yeah, the liquor store model.
They're open tend to be later in the morning and, you know.
Yeah, on Sunday. Yeah, the blue light. Like,
I don't know that anybody needs their marijuana at 8.
well, no, yeah, neither do I. I mean, they're mostly sleeping at 8 o'clock. They're waking up around 11.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I,
but we should have
I-
limited them.
yeah,
So-
I think the only thing I was thinking of is someone who, and again, this is really recreational marijuana, but it does make it, you know, someone who has some autoimmune or condition or other need for medical, so they might use a outlet like this. So I think having it open a good part of the day anyway. I would,
That's fine.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I would include the liquor store hours there though. Like it allows Sunday, like, you know, not, you know,
Limited use on.
It's 12 to 5 on Sunday.
yeah, like 12 to 5, something like that. on
12,
Sunday.
12 to 5 on Sunday, okay. All right. Good, okay. All right,
Okay, Section 5 was something that.
Go to
I'll be
church
honest,
and come on through.
yeah, well, we were suggesting prohibiting the drive-through after church here, so that's item 5.
Well, I think about it, you can't do drive-through anyway, because you have to show license and all that, like, of my friends that go. You have to show license and stuff like that.
Absolutely no drive-through.
When you go
Yeah.
through, yeah, so.
Absolutely not.
So you're in agreement with 5, right? We don't have any,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
Also, you know, just with businesses, you want them out of the car and, you know, might go to some other business too, you know.
yeah.
Walk around.
Right. So number 6, you know, products, I mean, all sorts of plants, products, accessories, and paraphernalia shall not be visible from the public sidewalk, street, or right of way, or any other public place. And then, you know, on-site storage must comply with all federal, state, and local regulations. I think for this, you know, people would either have it, you know, have it or have it further back in the store is my guess, or they'd have some sort of, screening, which makes me think if we should add something that your front windows can't just be, you know, when that I need to check to see if the town has something else, but what you wouldn't want is someone to take section 6 here and then just put a poster up in their front window so you couldn't see anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you mean like having like just paper over the windows or something, like it's a closed business?
We joke about it, but CVS always does this. The CVS will have a window and then they put boxes in front of the window so you can't see anything. I don't know. I can see both sides. I mean, I can see.
I like where you're going with it, so if you come up with language, feel free to put it down at one point.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
This is just
Like,
something
I
that
like,
popped in my
I like
brain
where
as I
your
was
head's
reading.
at with that.
Yeah.
I think that we might, we can come up with language. We might want to soften a little bit the first sentence then.
Right.
You know, we're saying it shall not be visible. That implies it shall not be visible at all from a public sidewalk. And the easiest way for them to do that is, you're right, to either put blinds on the windows or, you know, something that we might not, you know, we don't want this to look like a, you know, we want this to look like a good retail establishment also. So we can write that up so that they can't totally block windows. We can use some language from our actually form-based coding scenario. But what I'm getting at is, if we do that, I think we should not say that they shall not be they shall, I think we should say they shall be screened from visibility in a manner acceptable to the planning board. You know, that way, if,
Yeah, okay, it gives you some discretion.
you know, that way the planning board has control, but we don't want them we don't want them doing what CDS does. You're right. So we'll take a crack at the second sentence there.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm now, the last one, on-site storage of usable marijuana. Yeah, okay, right, okay.
Now, number 7.
Just getting at disposal, number 7. And then number 8 is getting at ventilation.
Yep. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so number 7, you've got to have secure disposal. I'll be honest, that's one of the things when at first I did not think about. I was like, oh yeah, you have to have secure disposal, and then same thing, ventilation, so that when you're walking by, it doesn't just smell, right? It doesn't smell horribly. So what is your ventilation plan? The applicant should present both of those to the planning board, or must present both of those to the planning board. And number 9 is the big one about security. So again, this is language for discussion, but I think it makes sense. Shall have a security system that's been approved by the Town of Pine Plains Police Department, including alarms and surveillance cameras designed to notify enforcement officers. Management must maintain surveillance data backup for a minimum of 30 days. And the police department shall be provided the name and phone number of a contact person to notify regarding suspicious activity. Burglar-proof drop safe that regulates employees' access to cash shall be used on premises. Because as Frank mentioned, and I think we all know, these are all cash businesses, at least for right now. So I think this is going to be a big, I would mention issue is the wrong word, but it's something that we need to think about, right? Is that the system is going to have to be approved by the police department. And I would want to know, what is the applicant's obviously thinking about this because it's their business, but have them present, what are they doing to maintain security?
What about, not indoor, but outdoor security? In other words, if people just purchase and walk outside, how does that fit in with the consumption laws that go along with this? If you have a parking lot or a parking area.
Well, technically, you're allowed to, wherever a cigarette is consumed, you're technically allowed to.
do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's at your own, like one of our officers said the other day, you can have it there, and if he smells it unburnt, you're fine. But if he smells it burnt,
Right.
then he can take act, like in a car. If then he can take his act. But so
I'm just thinking about some of the public comments we had about the liquor store down at the end of town by the car wash. About people congregating and things like that in the parking areas. And it's just something we had to deal with at the time, and as far as public comment. So I was just looking to see if there was any, rules, regulations or whatever about, parking lots or sidewalks or whatever. So we just don't want that to be a congregating area.
Right. I see your point.
Sort of loitering.
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
have any laws that apply to, other businesses on, you may,
Not that I could think of.
yeah, okay. We can give it, but it's,
It's
Well,
such
as
new
far as
ground.
like being on the business to regulate like what they.
Well,
their
just
customers
to,
are doing.
you go in and you purchase and you go outside and consume. So you're not really having a
Right.
lounge, but you're creating what may be a an
What is-
attractive nuisance kind of thing.
What is the law on that? Can someone just smoke marijuana?
Wherever you're like, technically,
Wherever
wherever
you
you
can
can have a
smoke a
cigarette, you're allowed to consume, but you're still not allowed to operate a motor vehicle. You know what I mean? So like if you were to sit there, consume, get in, you could get in trouble. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's a smart thing to go in there, buy it and sit in the parking lot where you could just go home, you know, like go.
We're not dealing with smart.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah, Don, I think that's a good question though. I mean, because like you said, and this is it's something that I don't know the answer to, but like I would hope the state has thought about this in their licensing, but you're right. I have a license for a retail dispensary, and I also happen to like outdoor tables and benches. And so I put some in my backyard. And if you want to go enjoy my sunflowers that I planted, then that's fine. Go ahead. When does that become a lounge, right? Like it's outdoors. It's not indoor smoking. But if you happen to legally smoke in my backyard, is that a lounge? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. But I think that maybe what you're getting to is what are things that people would do to be creative?
Park area
Right.
with benches and tables right outside. We really don't want to attract people.
but
Like,
that
say
could come
something like-
into the security of like open hours, like maybe they have to have somebody monitoring their parking lot to make sure that product is not being consumed.
Yeah, but that's what we have to make that illegal to consume the product. I mean, and I don't know how to do that. Yeah,
Well, they're doing it for them to keep parking spaces open. You know what I mean? Like, as they're probably
Why
gonna.
couldn't you say no consumption on the property of the dispensary?
well, that would be the easiest way
That
to.
would be pretty straightforward.
Could we do that?
Why not?
That's a good question. That may already be in, as I was thinking, it may already be in the license. You're not allowed to have, it would make sense. That's something for us to double check. But we could also, I
check
imagine,
that,
put it in.
yeah. Yeah, we hadn't thought of that one exactly. We can check what the licensing requirements are, but I think if the licensing requirements are silent on it, we could put that in, that no consumption on the premises of the property shall be allowed.
Right. That's a good point.
Okay, yeah.
Can you say something like no
You could just sell it now.
providing of conditions that would, such as picnic tables or chairs or something that would cause
Yeah.
congregating of customers outside the establishment or something like that?
We could, I think we could go that far probably, and
The summer, really great over there.
Yeah.
People drink beers in the parking lot of stores still.
Turn the bar portion of it into a retail sales, and then have the backyard garden wide open.
Correct.
That's just an example, not to.
And it happens now.
What's that?
It happens now.
Oh, yeah, it's going to there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, no, because you're not allowed to smoke cigarettes in there anymore.
Not in, but outside.
As soon as you step outside that fence.
I got you, but I feel that certain people are very respectful of it. Like the last time I went to New York City, I was blown away by how like it was miserable, the amount of like, but I thought people would be just a little bit more respectful and like where they actually smoke, like with little kids being around and this and that. I feel like the garden would be different because you're there with your family, you know what I
just
mean?
use that as an example of what could happen.
I got you.
Or what you could do. Even in the little park area out in front of the architects. Outside where the platter was, in that area.
Even our beautiful town park.
well, I think one thing we can take a crack at is no consumption on premises, and we can certainly limit or prohibit, on the premises, outdoor tables and benches, so that we get at the fact that we are allowing a retail business here, but we are not allowing a lounge or as the part of the,
Right.
yeah. All right, I think that,
By the way, I looked up Brian said, look up the state law. I looked at the SLA code. It's 200
Yes.
feet from the center of the doorway to the center of the other closest doorway is how they measure it. They don't measure from the edge of the property. They go by doorways.
Okay, we could do that. And that's picking 200 feet then.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what
If
the
that's what's
liquor
in the
law.
state, I think
That's the liquor law. I
I
don't
think
know.
I think
That's
that's a good thing
fine.
to follow.
Let's follow it, right, okay, 200 feet measured from doorway to doorway, okay.
Even if you use the school's center of their doors, well, 200 feet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's gotta be like 201 laws.
No.
Remember when the gas station,
Yeah,
the gas station sold beer, that was a question that came up before.
towards the end, they started to, yes.
Yeah, and because it was the proximity to the Catholic Church and the school.
Oh,
It did not, remember that, Sarah, it was something that came before us with the planning.
yeah.
What about the liquor store in Rhinebeck that is literally across the street from the elementary school? I mean, that is like the worst location ever, and that thing stays afloat.
I hope it's 200 feet from Warren's office anyway, yeah. Okay. Then we've, one thing we need to mention too, we had it as a footnote here, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it. We were just keeping the parking regulations as a
Yes.
regular retail use. I think that's one space per 250 for 250 square feet.
Computer guy?
No, I'm good.
On parking,
This is-
we were keeping parking at what your retail requires now. One space for each 250 square feet of gross floor area.
Yeah, the internet problems this week up here.
Oh. Can you hear us?
Well, it's windy as hell out there too.
Tomorrow.
Speaking now, or?
I'm not, I think
We don't, but I'm scared that we're gonna get dumped on.
oh,
But like they're saying, like over like a little bit further west, they're getting like a foot.
I think we may be
So
on,
wet and heavy.
It's gonna be miserable, right? Oh, expect.
are we, can y'all hear
We're
us?
hearing them, Taylor. Can you hear us?
No, it must not be.
I guess not. Yeah.
Do we even have internet?
Does anybody
Uh,
have
we
their
can-
number?
Yes.
Because
let
we're only
me-
down to the appendix, right? I mean, we
Well,
can
just
say
thought
thank
the
you.
lighting is gonna be interesting,
Yeah,
because
I'm connected.
it's one thing, my board really pays a lot of attention to the lighting. They,
But we should at least call them and tell them that we're having issues on. Are you on Messenger with them?
these lights blaring, like end up with like the bank.
Yep.
Is it the
See, so yeah, they're connecting.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay, are we connected now?
We're back.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, good. I think that was actually the last detail we had to add, and that was
Yeah.
to use your parking requirement for retail as the
Green arrow.
requirement for the dispensary.
All right.
We're on?
We don't know what happened there. Our screen just went complete.
Yeah. Well, we're actually at the conclusion. The last thing we wanted to say is that we would suggest keeping the parking requirements for retail to be what the parking requirement for the dispensary would be, the retail dispensary. It's one space, one parking space for every 250 square feet of area, floor area. So there it is, right here.
Yep.
We thought it made sense to not, it doesn't matter distinguishing, I think, the dispensary from any other retail facility.
That seems fine.
Yep.
We've counted the spaces. One thing back, the lighting section.
Yeah,
Is there room to, that, yeah, I don't know what the security requirements are with the well-lit stuff, but, talk about the usual things that we usually have in there about, down lighting, shaded, downlit to prevent light pollution, et cetera, et cetera.
It says interference with neighbors.
Yeah,
and-
that's very squishy though. Yeah, we usually do specify like down lit and shade.
Well, is it in
It
your
should
thing?
specify
Can you
like everything else.
send them what it says in your code, like for whatever?
Yeah,
And then-
I could send you what some of our other things say, or.
No, that'd be
So,
good. We might as well
Taylor?
use the same wording. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But you're requiring a special permit, right?
no, it's for the lighting to match like
You are
sewer.
requiring-
Oh.
It is a special permit.
It is a special permit. You're correct. Yeah, this would be a special permit. That's the first thing we say.
Yeah, and so
Items.
there are special permit guidelines, I think, in addition to these special. or
Yes.
So I believe it should be in there. isn't it?
Actually, we might be able to word it that way, Taylor, in the front where we say this is subject to a special permit, that all of the guidelines of the special permit section apply, plus these additional 10.
Plus these additional, yes.
Right, plus these additional 10.
And I think it should be, in there. We'll check on that. See.
Yeah, we'll require a lighting plan from.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Okay.
And we'll be in touch soon.
Yes, we will get to it and follow up with our changes to both documents.
And then.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
And I hope that snow stays west and doesn't come east.
So do we.
West and north.
All right,
Okay.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Oh,
moved.
Second?
Second.
all right.
All right.